calling all misfits, rebels, leaders, and teachers, welcome to the one place where the only way to fit in is by standing out, where big goals are met with even bigger action, and where we talk through then tackle all things entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Kelsey Knudsen, and this is the Get Shit Done podcast. Welcome to the Revolution. Hey, business leaders, you are lying to yourself. You do have the time. You're just not using it to its full potential. What the heck do I mean? Today we're talking about delegation and prioritization, specifically how to leverage your schedule as a CEO. By the way, things have probably changed. Now that you have team members, what worked previously schedule-wise will probably not work anymore. And today we're going to talk about why that is and how to make it better. So that way everyone is rowing the boat in the same direction and you can focus on casting the vision and getting your team and your business to that next level. Whether you're wanting to open another location, massively increase profits, add more offers to the mix, or grow your team. So I first want to acknowledge that the issue is not time. We all have the same 24 hours. I recently had this aha that I need to be honest about where my time is spent. And by auditing that and really asking myself, where is my time, energy, mindset? Where is all of that being spent? A lot of it was going to my alma mater. And again, I love my alma mater. I'm so glad I went there. I have a lot of pride in going there. But I realized it was distracting me and it was holding me back from these bigger picture goals and visions I have for my businesses, which now are down to two. I have Kelsey Murray Coaching and I have Empower, which is a community for female founders. We're opening a new space. There's lots of new exciting things coming with it. But at the end of the day, I have the two businesses and that is it. I just want to focus on the two. I wouldn't know that though, had I not paused and audited my time and asked myself that real question: what is really holding me back from hitting that level of business that I want to be at? And it was time. So I am culprit number one in this conversation. This is not an attack. This is just an awareness of like, hey, you probably have big goals and you're not where you want to be. And part of the issue could be you. But let's talk about how to solve it. The biggest sneak attack I think that happens in business ownership is in the beginning, you wear all the hats. We already know this. You wear all the hats, you work really hard, you hustle. You know how to hustle for a quick buck. Like if a new client comes in and you're kind of tired, but you need that money, you're going to stay extra late for that person or sign them on when you should probably say no. But as you start to build financial momentum and safety, and you get to a place of consistency in your business and you start adding team members to the mix, you're no longer in fight or flight mode in your business, but you haven't stopped and acknowledged that yet or adjusted your strategy because of that. So what I often see is business owners get stuck in this loop of making short-term decisions and pivots and adjustments that impact the now because that's what they are used to doing from the past. But if you're here and you're listening to this episode, you are not in fight or flight anymore. Doesn't mean to ignore profit. Doesn't mean to let the gas off of protecting the integrity of the financials of the business. That's not what I'm saying. You just also need to think bigger picture and more proactively and strategically about your business in a way you didn't before because you didn't have that luxury before. You know, I was talking recently with some team members about this money piece because when money is tight, you make different decisions in the business because it directly impacts the money. But when you start to build a safety net and a cushion, you start to make different choices because that motivation isn't there. That hunger isn't there as much. And so things can fall through the cracks. You can start to like fall back to old habits. And that's when I see CEOs start to add another client day to the mix. That's when I can see them going off and doing client calls or client meetings and hiding into the day-to-day, hiding from the strategy, the leadership, the processes, the operations, the finances. I think all of those things come at a cost when we focus more on the day-to-day versus the big picture. This concept of working in versus on your business. And the truth is everyone has to do both. Unless you're a very large company, even then, this is crazy. I don't know if you know this, but small business is up into 500 employees. That just doesn't feel like I think of a business with 450 employees and I think of a solopreneur and I can't imagine a lot of similarities in their conversation. There might be, but it's just crazy. I just want you to know the range of small business is vast. But that being said, there is definitely a reality to wearing multiple hats when you are a small business owner. I would argue, though, the leaders I talk to, the people who have team members, neglect working on their business as much as they should. And I think there's reasons. I think, if you come from the service industry, maybe you're a hairstylist like I was, and you're good at your work and you're feeling insecure about looking at the P&L. You haven't logged into QuickBooks in a while. You're ignoring your accountant. If that sounds like you, maybe you're like adding a couple client days to the mix because the business needs to make some more money and you can make more money. Sure, that short-term move may help the business today, but I would argue it's actually hurting the longevity of the business. And I think that ability to flip the in the business versus on the business shift in your brain is tricky. It's hard because working on your business is gray. It's unclear. It's undefined. I paint the scenario on the days where you have clients. You can picture what that looks like. If you're doing a good job. If you're not. If you got a tip. If they booked again. If they left a review because of the work that you did. No one is tipping you or leaving reviews or giving you feedback at being the CEO because it's just you. Unless you join a mastermind and then people can provide that feedback for you. I digress. But I encourage you to sit here and really audit. Are you spending time and are you prioritizing working on your business as much as you should be? Or is that something we need to increase? And the business owners I see, majority of them, not all, most, really struggle with working on the business. So let's define the two. I've done episodes on this before, but in case you've missed them before, working in the business, in my Kelsey opinion, is anything that is client-focused, client-centric. That's things like if you're a hairstylist and you own a salon and you're taking clients, you're working in the business. I would even argue if you own a salon and you need to run to Cosmoprof or Salon-Centric and pick up some product, I would argue that's working in the business because without product, you guys can't do your job. And without the ability to do your job, you don't have a business. So that is so directly correlated to the activity of working in the business. When we think of working on the business, I think of it like decorating a home or popping the hood and like deep cleaning a car, right? It's designed to make things better and prettier and more efficient and cleaner and nicer. So to me, working on the business is things like planning for the year, auditing your last quarter, going through your KPIs, having leadership conversations with your team, deciding what platform to be on and why, hiring that next person, firing this person, having a strategy meeting with your team. To me, those are all things that don't have dollars tied to them specifically. However, in the bigger scheme of the business, you are the best person for. And I think that's why a lot of people avoid it. They don't know what that looks like. They know, if I have client meetings, I know where I need to be. I know what time I need to be there. I know how to do it. But if I wake up and it's supposed to be a CEO day, how do I feel that day? Well, I'm here to tell you, you can't just ignore it. I think it's important to acknowledge that that day should exist, that time should exist in your calendar. And then the next level of it is, what do we fill it with? Which we're going to talk a little bit more about. So working in versus on, in money generating stuff, on improvement. I think that's a simple way to define the two. The solution and the way to carve out more time, because really that's what we're talking about, is a capacity issue. We talked about how that whole concept of not enough time isn't true. The capacity issue, if you have one plate, you're the CEO. How do we carve out, how do we take stuff off of your plate? Because you just get the one plate. How do you take stuff off your plate to create more space for the things that are on the business activities, which also I would argue is probably leadership, one-on-ones, audits, annual planning, that kind of stuff is the first to fall off when time gets tight. So the truth is, delegation is going to be your superpower. And on top of that, delegation is a clean handoff. I talked about this, I think it was last week. It's not so much just saying like, onboarding is in your zone now, you just take it. It's having an employee help build a process, building the process together, making sure they understand how to use the process by teaching them, have them teach you to ensure they know how to do it, and that they could film a video. Like there's so many ways you can make that an efficient thing, but ensuring they really own it so you don't have to micromanage. Because if you're just micromanaging, if you're saying, hey, you do this thing, and they're still coming back to you with daily questions, check-ins, approval. Is that really getting it off of your plate? Or at that point, you're just playing hot potato with each other? I think that happens a lot where we think we're delegating, but then all of a sudden it's like, now it's back on your plate because that person took too long to do it and is inefficient to go back and forth 3 times. When, truthfully, having a little more time on the upfront to make sure they really understood it to its full potential and the level to which they needed to take ownership of that function of the business is better use of your time. I think that delegation is something we don't talk about very often as business owners because it's so different in the small business arena. And you didn't get here because you're a stellar leader. You got here because you're great at the business you have. And then you have more demand than you were able to handle. So you added people to the mix. And now you are a leader and delegator and CEO and CFO, and you didn't even realize that transition happened. So you wonder why on those days that you feel shitty about yourself and you're struggling and your team is struggling, you avoid it because you don't know how. You don't know how, and that's okay. I think just calling out the fact that having a plan to delegate effectively should definitely be in the mix because it's going to free up that time, and then that time can be better spent with things that are going to move the needle forward in the big picture of your business. Because at the end of the day, I see this happen a lot with businesses. It's like they prove it's a thing. They get a couple people on the team. Financially, they're growing. Each year they make a little bit more. They charge more, higher end clients, a little bit more. But if you don't get in front of it and really start to paint the picture of where you want to take things, eventually business is just happening to you and not the other way around. And I don't think you want that. So once we acknowledge that delegation is the solution, I want to share a couple calendar things that we can do to help support that. I think if you're needing support in how to do delegation effectively, check out last week's episode. I dive more deep in that. But also reach out. This is something that I work with specifically with my teams, which I know is not everybody. But just know delegation is a part of the equation. And if you struggle with it, there's a path through. I think the first step is acknowledging this is definitely a pain point in our business. And I have some suggestions on how to make that better, so reach out. But I want to share some strategies that can help you really get your timing and your schedule into alignment, because we're going to assume the delegation happened and it worked. We're going to assume you created the processes, you trained your team, you checked in with them, and then you had consistent check-ins to make sure that process was most effective. We're going to assume that's done. From there, I want you to then do this. Acknowledge you need to work on your business more. And part of that is leadership, the people stuff, the stuff you hate, the stuff that you don't need as employees. So why does your team need it? Like that stuff. That takes time. That takes time to do right. And we want to do it right. But here's some 3 scheduling hacks that will help support that on the business stuff, because there are things to be done. And just because you don't like doing it, or it's new to you, or you're unsure how to do it right, start by trying to plan out the quarter. Start by blocking off time to look at some KPIs, even if you don't really know what they are. Just start by putting it on the calendar. And here's a couple things to keep in mind as you're thinking about taking action on this stuff. Number 1 is this. Carve out a 100% non-meeting day per week and honor it. If you don't have this already. If you do, congratulations. You might need a second. But if you don't, this is game changing. Think about meetings. And meetings can be like meetings with your team, meetings with clients, like a haircut, if you consider that a meeting, like anything that's like chunks of blocked time where you are not working, you are with that person, which is part of the work, but there's prep, there's follow-up, you can't answer emails at that time. You can't look at your P&L at that time. You can't do other things during that time. It eats up. And I find on meeting days, I'm on. And so what if you set up your schedule where you just honor that? What if you could just have a day where, okay, it's just easier for me to just be on today. And that's enough. I can do all the follow-up, the strategy, the back end, all that stuff on a different day, but to just turn the lights on and know, okay, I'm just in conversation mode today, maybe a little block of time after each to debrief to keep yourself organized. But I think having a non-meeting day leads to that bigger, deeper work that is really, really, really important in business. And I think business owners that feel like they're drowning, or that their business is happening to them versus the other way around, those are the people that are cramming their schedules with meetings. Hot tip number 2, use do not disturb when you're doing your deep work. So if we're assuming the delegation has happened, we're saying, you know what, Kels, you're right. I do need to do more on the business days. And it's on the calendar. But to really protect that calendar, to say, hey, not only did I put it on there, but I'm making sure it happens, use do not disturb. Even like your desktop, if you're working on your laptop or your desktop, I just find it's so easy to get distracted. And when it comes to big picture decisions, when it comes to giving in-depth feedback to an employee, when it comes to coming up with your content plan for the next quarter, like the bigger picture, almost creative stuff, the ability to focus is priceless. And I did research recently for a podcast episode, and I found it takes 23 minutes on average to redirect your energy once you get distracted. So picture every email that comes through. Picture every DM that you see. Oh, I need to respond to that. Picture every phone call that you see. 23 minutes. That adds up. If you put your hourly rate behind that data and you think of how many times you get distracted throughout a day, that's a lot. And the first to go is always that on the business, that bigger picture deep work. That, in my opinion, is the stuff that takes you from good to great. That's the stuff that takes you from 1 million to 5 million, from $100,000 a year in revenue to $500,000 a year in revenue. It's that deep work, the big picture strategy, and then of course the execution of that. Last thing to help you delegate and really reclaim your time, realign your time. Use the technology that exists that can help you. If you're sitting here and you're like, Kels, my team is leveraged. I've delegated everything I can to them in their skill set. Look into tech. Look at ChatGPT. I am still a student of ChatGPT. I have so much to learn, but I'm slowly realizing the value of it. And part of it is having someone who can help me with that. I don't know that I would have taken the time to figure it out as much as I have had I not had that person help me with it. But all of that is there. And I think there's just so many ways we can leverage tech to make things easier on ourselves. But when you're a busy CEO, you don't always have the time to sit and do that. Here's me telling you, it may be worth your time to sit and research that platform, to take that demo, to book that sales call with that company and say, hey, give me your best pitch on why we should migrate over to your platform and what that's going to do for our business. That may be worth your time. It may not feel like it, but that shift, if that can save you hours in the future, it's worth it. And I think we forget that. We forget to make those choices and adjustments in business. But here's the kicker for that last piece. If you're going to use ChatGPT, if you're going to use automations, maybe in tech you already have or new platforms, if you're going to delegate more, whether that's with your team or delegate to your app, to ChatGPT, maybe you're delegating to chat, you need to know what to feed it. You need to know what to feed it and tell it. And that's the part no one wants to do, because guess what? That's pen, paper in your brain. I know that can feel a little disheartening because there's no like a magical wand you can wave here and how to dump out your brain and have a process just be made like that. But I think that acknowledging, hey, there's solutions out there. And by the way, part of the solution involves me brain dumping, which means I need to create time on my schedule for it, which means I need to honor that time once I put it on the schedule, which means I probably need to take a day without meetings. All those things can be true, but all of those things and those choices, because really this comes down to choices as a CEO, all of these choices are going to lead to a better big picture for you and your business and your team. And I think that is the key here. So master your time as a CEO by delegating more effectively, which again, we talked more about last week, by learning what to prioritize, and by taking ownership of the choices you're making. Every minute you're spending in your business is a choice. If you're firefighting constantly, continuously, that's a choice. If you're thinking, ooh, my client meetings are an hour because I want to make sure they get the most value, that's a choice. So if we own our choices and we say, hey, we need to make some different choices, ask yourself the question of what processes, what systems, what scheduling support, what needs to shift to support these better choices for the future. And it may involve asking for some help, which I know you're sitting here. I know some of us struggle with that. I struggle with that. That's hard for me. I'm an 8. It probably doesn't surprise you. But I think that we need to talk about this stuff more. And I think the magic secret ingredient I see of my successful $1 million plus business owners. They take ownership of their choices and they recognize that those have to change and shift and adjust as their business grows and to take it to the next level. Know what your next level is, identify what that is, and then make sure you're delegating to a team to its highest level of efficiency. And then be really focused on where your time and energy goes. And it can't go to the weeds. Stop watering the weeds. Start planting the seeds. Oh my God, that's so corny. But truthfully, it's true. Start planting the seeds. Do the deep work. Look at the bigger picture. Create the framework that your team can then thrive and execute within. And I think you're going to be so much happier for it. So leader, you got this. Delegation is your solution. Creating more time and structure on how to work on your business is also the solution. And then joining Remaster is the final solution. I just want to make sure you know about it. It's my mastermind retreat combination specifically for high-level CEOs, multi-6 to multi-7 in revenue with teams. We are going to annual plan together, quarter plan together, audit together, special guests on specific topics. It's really designed to work alongside you as you are making this transition into full-blown leadership in your business. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. That's what I have for you. I'm going to catch you next week. Hey, thanks for being a part of the Get Shit Done Revolution. My hope is this episode sparked a fire in you, equipped you with some practical next steps, or inspired you to take action towards your goals. If it did, please help spread the word by sharing this episode or leaving a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're tuning in. Now it's time for me to hand over the keys and let you get shit done.